You can see the slides, Linson?
Yes, uncle.
Yeah. Today we will continue our study on the book of Esther. And I think on Sunday, Linson had taken us through an overview of the book of Esther. And today's study will be based primarily from the first chapter of Esther. And we will look at some of the lessons that we can learn from it and apply in our lives. Okay. Some of the things that Linson said we might be repeating, but we will try not to cover much of that because already you heard it. Okay. But some of the points in this first slide might be an overlap. Okay. Uniqueness of Esther. India is mentioned in the Bible here in the book of Esther. God is not mentioned in the book of Esther. Prayer or fasting are not mentioned. The significant role of women in God's plan you can see in the book of Esther. Spiritual principles are not mentioned in the book of Esther, but right through the book, from the first to the last verse, you can see the stamp of God. You can see that it is His story that is unfolding around, okay, in this world. Some of the key lessons that we can learn, I will summarize from the book of Esther, okay. Dangerous ambitions. Xerxes, the king, had an ambition to wipe out the Greek Empire. Okay, he was already ruler of the largest empire on the earth at that time, and up there in the north there was the kingdom of the Greeks, which was becoming more and more powerful. But he wanted to destroy that and become the supreme ruler of the earth. So he had a dangerous ambition. Many people have ambitions like that. Then in the book of Esther, we find the role of alcohol and its drinks. Okay, alcohol and the bad effects of alcohol and many other things, especially in chapter 1. Today's study, we will be taking a look at this particular dimension and aspect. What can go wrong when a person consumes alcohol? Then we also look at family discords. Okay, so chapter 1 is also rich in this particular topic. When discord or friction takes place between the king Xerxes and his wife Queen Vashti, okay, and how these two people entered into conflict, how they should have resolved the conflict, what they did, what they should not have done, okay, all those things, some of those lessons we will be able to see. Okay, and as you read the book of Esther, you find the king Xerxes making a choice of a life partner. Okay, he discards Vashti and then he takes up Esther. But the process he undergoes and what is the biblical method, or what was wrong with Xerxes' decisions or choice and how it was harmful, that we can see. Then in the book of Esther, we also see racial hatred. There was Haman, the Agagite, and his hatred for the Jews. That was very visible. And it can be irrational and it can be handed down from generation to generation. So many times, even in our own lives, we will find that, there are many things which our parents hated or disliked, and we carry it in our life as well. Then we look at genocide, where the government machinery was triggered to exterminate a particular community at the behest of an individual. Okay, and we see about that. Then we look at the struggle of minorities. The Jews were a minority in this huge big nation, They were captives who had come to Babylon. Of course, this incident is not in the city of Babylon. It is in the city of Shushan, which was another capital of the Persian Empire. Okay, and we also look at God's sovereign care and provision for his children, how God takes care of them even when they are not asking for help, even when they may not be much aware of his presence or his ways of working, and when God seems to be so distant and far, how God takes care of his children and how he provides for their needs, and how he hears their humble cry, and all those we can see. The Bible has application. When we read books like this, don't read it very rapidly and quickly, just like a story. There are many lessons, many powerful lessons, and many things that you can apply in your personal life, and it will be good if we take time to study it in detail. Okay, so let's take a walk through the world that Esther was born into, okay, and get a feel of the time that was there when Esther walked about on the earth, okay. Esther chapter 1 verse 1, the very first word that the book of Esther starts with is Vayehi, okay. This is a word, the first word in the book. It occurs 727 times in the entire Bible. Vayehi. Okay, you can remember it. Those who would like to write it down can also write it down. It means this is what happened. Okay, this is what happened. Okay, so the book of Esther starts with this note. This is what happened. Okay, it is emphatic that it is a historically correct document. Okay, the author, whoever it was, whether it was Esther or whether it was someone else writing, we don't know. Okay, but whatever it is, the author is saying that this account is not a story. When you read the book of Esther, many people, including like how Linson mentioned about Martin Luther, discarding this book as mere Jewish fable written to encourage believers, Jewish believers. It's not so. The book starts with the first word Vayehi, which means this is what happened. And the author is telling that this happened in real time, in real life. And the people that are recorded are historical figures. The places are historical. The events are historical. And everything has the significance to powerfully portray what God was doing at that time. Okay, so this is a book of a historical account. History will always be colored by who is writing it. Okay, for our nation, Bhagat Singh would be a freedom fighter. For the British, he would have been a terrorist. Okay, so each event in history as written would have two or many other sides of viewing it, that incident. It depends on which side of the story you're in, okay? And the book of Esther is written by Jews, by God's people, okay? So it will be colored by his views of the earth, his views of the events, his views of what he was doing, okay? It is not the Persian view of what took place. It is not Xerxes' view. It is not Vashti's view. It is not Haman's view. It is the view of the God of the Bible, okay? History is colored by who is writing it. It is the Jewish perspective of events, not the Persian. The Bible is full of such eyewitness accounts, okay? Why he means this is what happened. And when we read the first chapter, you will find so much intricate details of the palace in which the events took place. And you get an idea that the author, whoever it was an eyewitness. He lived there, he moved there, he or she lived, moved, and felt and touched and perceived those things, and could remember, recollect, and describe in detail every single thing that they saw in that place. Okay, so Esther chapter 1 verse 1, this is what happened during the time of Xerxes, the Xerxes who ruled over 127 provinces stretching from India to Kush, or India to Ethiopia. Okay, the first thing that is mentioned is the name of the emperor, Xerxes. So you know exactly who that Xerxes was, because Esther 1:1 says that he ruled 127 provinces, and those provinces stretched from India to Ethiopia. Okay, so you know who exactly that person was, and by history, through archaeological evidence, you know the exact time in which this particular ruler lived, and so you know the time in which these biblical accounts were there. Okay, we have already seen that this is the first. This is the only place where India is mentioned. Twice it is mentioned in the book of Esther. Okay, Persian emperors during Jewish return. Okay, I have many times mentioned it, but I will repeat again and again and again till it gets into your blood. Okay, whether you like it or not, whether you wish to remember it or not, I wish you would read, I wish you would remember, because this will help you to place the biblical events in perspective and understand the sequence of events. The first emperor, Persian emperor that is mentioned is Cyrus. He ruled from 550 to 530 BC. Then it was Cambyses. He ruled from 530 to 522 BC. This was followed by King Darius, 522 to 486 BC. This slide will be available. Slides will be available to anyone who asks, and I will give it to you. So you need not write down everything unless you want to mark it in your Bible. So King Darius was the next one. Darius was Xerxes' father. Our story is set in the period 485 to 465 BC. And then it was followed by Artaxerxes. What happened during Cyrus's time? Daniel was in the palace. We have seen that in Chronicles. We have seen that in the first chapter of Daniel. We also saw in the return of Zerubbabel and Joshua, the altar being restored and the opposition to the construction beginning in Jerusalem. The first batch had come. Cambyses was the next ruler, not mentioned in the Bible, but the opposition continued and litigation or legal tangles were there, as people took the Jews to court of the Persians to stop the construction. Then the third ruler, Darius, that is Xerxes' father, was the one who gave permission to the construction of the temple, and the temple construction finished with Haggai and Zechariah, the prophets, preaching to them. Then during Xerxes' time, you have Esther and Mordecai and the book of Esther in that setting. God protected the Jews from racial hatred and genocide, and protected his people who had not returned back to Jerusalem but were back in the pagan land. Okay, and the last of the kings that are strongly mentioned is the person called Artaxerxes, under whom the books of Nehemiah and Esther were written. The walls of Jerusalem were built, and the Israelites were back to their sinful ways, and Ezra and Nehemiah played a vital role in revival and bringing the people back to their God. Okay, that is how the sequence of events took place, and we are in the period 485 to 465 BC when Xerxes was the ruler. Okay, that is the setting for the book of Esther. Okay, many of the slides that you will see as the background for what is on the screen are actual archaeological sites in the nation of Iran, where this empire was centered or capitaled in. Okay, under King Darius, that is Xerxes' father, Persia had become the biggest and greatest empire. Okay, and he built the city of Persepolis. This is the entrance to his palace and the place where foreign delegates and everyone, very impressive and very large, okay, through which all the people would have come, and it was a magnificent place that he built up. And Darius turned his attention then to the growing Western power in Greece. Okay, once he had established himself and his control over the Medo-Persian Empire, he turned his attention to Greece, which was in Europe and was rising to power. Okay, but the outcome of the adventure of Darius with respect to Greece was known to the Jews, at least to the godly Jews, those who read the Bible, those who believed what God wrote through his prophets. They knew about it. Daniel chapter 10 verse 20 is a prophetic glimpse, gives a prophetic glimpse of what will take place when the Persians would try to invade Greece. Okay, 537 BC, that is when the prophet Daniel wrote, and it says he is writing in the third year of the reign of King Cyrus. Okay, Cyrus was the first emperor with respect to the Jews, the Persian emperor who defeated Babylon. Okay, and when the empire started, this is what Daniel was given a glimpse of. And verse 20 of chapter 10 of Daniel reads like this. So he said, do you know why I have come to you? This is an angel who has sent to the prophet Daniel. Daniel had been praying for 21 days, seeking the mind and will of God, trying to understand what the future holds for these Jews who had not returned to Jerusalem. You know, what will happen to them? Okay. And the king had passed the edict. The first batch had already gone to Jerusalem. But what will happen to the others? And what will happen to the Persian Empire? This was the thought on his mind. And this angelic visitor told, do you know why I have come to you? Soon I will return to fight against the prince of Persia. And when I go, the prince of Greece will come. Okay. In other words, we are given a picture of the demonic powers who energized the kings or the empires of that time. Okay, the Persian Empire had been energized by a demonic power. Okay, and the angel who was speaking to Daniel said he will return to fight against the prince of Persia. Okay, and this particular prince of Persia was very powerful. Okay, he had detained that angel for 21 days or 3 weeks. That is the period of time where Daniel was fasting and praying. And later on, the archangel Michael, who is mentioned in the Bible as the angel guardian of the nation of Israel, he comes and engages the prince of Persia, and this particular angel was able to come and deliver the message from God to Daniel. And he says that, he will go back and fight against the prince of Persia. And so as he fights, what will happen? The prince of Greece will come. In other words, Greece would become more and more powerful. Persia would become more and more weak. Okay, and all these things came to pass in 490 BC, 47 years after Daniel had prophesied. The Persians were defeated by the Greeks at Marathon. Okay, we all know about the marathon race. And the distance that it entails. Okay, it comes from this particular battle in which Darius was defeated. A messenger, a Greek messenger, runs from this city of Marathon to Athens. Okay, and covers this great distance of 40 kilometers and delivers the message of victory at Athens. And he's so exhausted that he dies. Okay, the marathon race commemorates this historic run of this Greek messenger who brought the message of defeat of Darius to the Athenian citizens. Okay, Darius returned home after his defeat and later on died. The golden era of the Persian Empire was over and it started declining slowly. Okay, but at Xerxes' time, it was still a very powerful force to be reckoned with. Even during the time of Artaxerxes, under whom Ezra and Nehemiah served, okay, they at that time also it was very powerful. And soon after, immediately after the death of Darius, Xerxes ascended the throne in 486 BC, 4 years after the war with the Greeks, the defeat at the hands of the Greeks. Xerxes was aged 34, okay, a young man. Esther 1:2 says, at that time, King Xerxes reigned from his royal throne in the citadel of Souza. Okay, on Sunday also, Listen had shown us a picture of this palace, ruins and archaeological site, place where you can visit if you go to Iran even today. The palace of Souza is the place where the books of Esther and Nehemiah are enacted in the Persian capital of Souza. Okay, in the eighth chapter of Daniel. Okay, Daniel himself had not visited this Persian capital of Souza or its citadel, but he was transported 120 years before Esther in a vision to this place. God took him to this place and showed him the future of the Medo-Persian Empire. Okay, you can read that in Daniel chapter 8. In the vision, God showed Daniel that Persia will be defeated by Greece later on. Okay, and God showed Daniel about what will come to pass later on. The interesting thing about the Bible is how every prophecy that is there in the Bible comes true historically, whether it was written 120 years earlier or 1,000 years earlier. Everything that is written in the Bible comes to pass. So it's a warning for us also not to ignore what is written in God's word, but to take to heart, take things seriously in the Bible. Okay, and in this city also the tomb of Daniel is there in the city of Souza. Okay, so the ruins of Souza, which were excavated, and that pinnacle there is very close to the Ulai Canal, is the tomb of Daniel. Okay, he built what is called as Xerxes also continued the construction which his father had started and built massively. He finished Persepolis, okay, which his father started constructing, but a lot of money was required for this huge construction. So people had to pay a heavy toll in form of taxes. They were not very happy with what was happening, but they had no other alternative. Okay, even today the ruins look beautiful. Okay, this is a wide angle view of the city of Persepolis. Okay, which was another capital of the Persian Empire. Babylon was one, Ecbatana was another, Susa was the third, and Persepolis was the fourth. These four were capitals of this huge empire. You know, the empire was so big that it required four capitals. Okay. Many of these ruins are in very beautifully preserved conditions. Okay, so you can understand the book of Esther as you go through these ruins. Okay, uncertainty and war loomed in the air as you begin chapter 1. Okay, Xerxes called himself the king of the Medes and the Persians. This was not like, because he had taken over the Babylonian empire. Babylonians now considered themselves as under the authority of the Medes and the Persians, but they still liked that empire should be called as the king of Babylon. They wanted the emperor to have that title because Babylon was a bigger city. But Xerxes changed his title to king of Medes and Persians. Okay, this offended the Babylonians and they started rebelling. Egypt rebelled in another place, and it took 4 years before he got married again. On Sunday, Linson made a passing mention to the fact that, itna time laga tha, 4 years after Vashti was dethroned and Queen Esther became queen, or Esther became queen. It took 4 long years. Why it took 4 long years? Because soon after that party, when he started planning for his invasion of Greece, actually Egypt and Babylon rebelled, and he had to go and battle and fight and control that rebellion before he could take on the West. And this whole process took 4 years. And so his selection of Esther also got delayed. But God had another purpose. Okay, we had seen that he was 34 years old. 7 years into his reign, he would have been 41 years of age. And Esther would have been at that time a woman, just a young woman. Okay, and 7 years before, she would have been just a little girl. Okay, so God had to let time pass for Esther to mature into a woman, okay, before he could. So in a large sense, even the unrest that took place in Egypt and Babylon are all part of that big picture that God paints. The whole idea of the book of Esther is the bringing of Esther on the scene, and she is the heroine. And Vashti is in passing mentioned as she moves out of the scene. Okay, but Xerxes was a womanizer. He had harems in both Souza and Persepolis. Many women that he had in his home with whom he had a relationship, and this queen was not the only one that he had a relationship with. It was that was the manner in which the Persians ran their palace and their homes. Okay, he wanted to avenge his dad's defeat. Okay, so this was the world into which Esther was born. There was an ambitious king, an ambitious ruler. There was a power that was rising in the west, and a little girl was born. Hadassah, chapter 2, verse 7, was born into a world like this. A small child born to a minority family, okay, a powerless family. And that's the scene. Many times, we look back at our simple situations in life. I'm born to parents who are poor. I'm born to parents who have no influence. I'm born to parents who have no money to finish my education or to marry me off into a rich home. I have parents who cannot leave behind for my future anything as a security. Many times we are afraid. I was tormented with that fear even when I was finishing my B Farm and M Farm. All my friends had big connections because their parents were general managers or managing directors of some pharma company or the other. And my dad was just a clerk in the railways. And I just worried what will happen when I entered the scene, when I looked for a job, whether I would get a job at all. These were worries on my mind. And similar worries would be there in each of our minds. And so the book of Esther throws open such things into our face. Okay, her name means myrtle tree. Her parents would have looked at her beautiful face, and that joy, that smile would have reminded them of myrtle, which is ever fresh. It's a tree that doesn't shed its leaves much. Okay, so evergreen, always pleasant. That's the kind of name that they thought for her. In the Persian language, they named her Esther, which means star. The world she knew collapsed around her when she was a small child. Okay, she lost both her parents, and you know how it would be. Every child, every youth has an ambition. Even when their parents are alive, it's very hard to finish the ambition. Okay, and everything looks uncertain. But when both parents are gone, what a destruction it would have been. What a terrifying situation it would have been. She was adopted by a cousin called Mordecai. Okay, was older to her, and he took up that responsibility. Not many people have good family relatives like that. But anyway, God gave Esther a good cousin, someone who worried for her future, someone who took care of her like her parents. Okay, just a question and thought in our minds: what do we do about the people we know who have a need? Okay, God had a wonderful plan for Esther and her life. Okay, she may have been a small child, but God had. Remember the song "God Sent His Son" that was written by Bill and Gloria Gaither. Okay, when their child was born, when the world was uncertain, and they composed this song, God Sent His Son. They called him Jesus, and because he lives, we can face tomorrow. Okay, how true it must have been for Esther when she looked back at her own life, everything collapsing around her, but the fact that God took care of her future. Okay, and this, she was not an isolated event. God had picked up strange change people like Moses, okay, provided a basket, provided for the Pharaoh's own daughter, a woman who was able to shake even her father's command, and even ruled instead of her brother for some time. And God had a way of using people who were nobodies in the earth to become somebodies. Okay, Esther and Mordecai are real people. This is Esther and Mordecai's tomb, which is there in the city of Hamadan in Iran, which was formerly a capital, Ekbatana. Okay, and it is still there, preserved in good condition. It is a pilgrimage site to which many Muslims go and actually worship, because they also consider Esther and Mordecai to be important people in the history of their people. Okay, many official records in both Souza, Persepolis, and Ekbatana, they refer to a person called Marduka. Okay, in the official records, it is the Persian way of writing Mordecai. Okay, and it is likely that it is the same person, Mordecai, who appears in the book of Esther, because it belongs to the same time period in history. Okay, verse 3 of chapter 1 goes like this: in the third year of Xerxes' reign. Okay, in the third year, he would have been 37 years old. That is 484 BC. He started ruling in 486, so 86, 85, 84 BC. The gun is beginning to be loaded for the war between the Greeks and the Persians. They were called the Greco-Persian Wars. Okay, and it's very famous in history. Those of you who remember the history books that you read in your childhood, many of these wars would have been taught to you. Okay, a great banquet was hosted, and in verse 3 we are told that all the princes, nobles, officials, and military leaders of the Mede and Persian Empire were assembled. And this party or banquet lasted for 6 months. Okay, it was not just a time of feasting and drinking. Lot of important things were happening at that time. The vast wealth and splendor of the nation was on display, according to verse 4. Okay, it was a time when the military invasion of Greece was being planned out. Okay, very detailed, very elaborate, and very meticulously. This whole thing was planned by all the nobles of the Mede Persian Empire. Okay, people who are heads of various provinces, they got together and they made this plan, how they will invade and what will be their battle strategy. Okay, and this is when the incident between Ahasuerus or Xerxes and Esther takes place. Okay, his actions would put the world at war. Okay, and the party, lot of glamorous things are mentioned. Some of these pillars are still there. Look at the height of the pillar. That is just the top of the pillar. It would have stood on columns that were almost 50 feet tall. Okay, now only the top part of the pillars are existing, but it would have looked like this with curtains hanging on it. That is the second photo. Okay, 7 days of party was then given for all those who are living in the city of Souza, and the author describes in detail the marble pillars, the curtains, the couches, the precious stones, and everything. Okay, very detailed and intricate and elaborate discussion of those things, indicating that he was very familiar, and it's a very accurate record of what took place. The details are precise. Many times Bible scholars, skeptics look at this book and throw it out, but it's an eyewitness account and it's reliable. Wine was served according to verse 7. Wine flowed with the king's liberality. Okay, that is what is mentioned here. And it was served in goblets which were different from each other. Archaeology shows, in our own homes, we have cups and saucers and we try to make them all look similar. We buy sets which look similar, but the Bible makes a special mention that each goblet was different from the other. And when you look at the archaeological evidence, Precisely, that is what you find. Every goblet looks different from the other. Many such goblets have been found. They are there in many of the museums across the world because they have been sold to many museums, but this is a true description. Okay, Proverbs chapter 23, verses 29 to 33. I think all of you will know this picture, the cartoon figure who is there, Captain Haddock from Tintin comic. Okay, Proverbs 23, verses 29 to 33. Who has woe? Who has sorrow? Who has strife? Who has complaints? Who has needless bruises? Who has bloodshot eyes? Those who linger over wine, who go to the sample bowls of mixed wine. Okay, this is what the wise writer of the book of Proverbs tells. Like, who has problems? Look at it. It's the one who runs after wine. Okay, don't gaze at wine when it is red, when it sparkles in the cup, when it goes down smoothly. In the end, it bites like a snake and poisons like a viper. Your eyes will see strange sights and your mind will imagine confusing things. Okay, the Bible is very clear about the impact or effect of fermented wine, and it doesn't recommend fermented wine for the believers. Okay, or for those who belong to the people of God. Okay, the word in English is common, wine, which refers to fermented and non-fermented grape juice. But in the original Hebrew and in Greek, multiple words are used. So before you make up your mind by what articles that are found in the net about the rightness or wrongness of drinking, you must make sure you go to the original Hebrew and Greek words to understand the subject, so that you don't get misled or misguided by Christians who are drinking and promoting others to drink. Okay, alcoholism, alcoholic beverages are routinely part of the social landscape today. Okay, our young people, when they go to college and meet their friends or go for parties in their homes, and when people go, young people join new jobs, the work culture is such that alcohol would be a part of the social life. And there was a time when people looked down on people who are drinking. Today, if you're not drinking, then people will look down on you and talk about you. Okay, and the pressure to become one with the crowd is very strong and difficult, and it is symbolic of influence and being modern. And so all the visible people, those who are socially forward, okay, not the reserved ones, especially those who are socially forward, they would take up drinking, and it becomes soon for many people a habit they cannot kick off. Okay, and then we get examples of powerful people like this smiling, consuming liquor, and then as believers we tend to think whether we are missing something in life if we don't take it, and if we take it, then we get influenced by what is written. Okay, saying no to alcohol may not be easy, but you must exit before it is too late. Okay, 1 Corinthians chapter 10 verse 13 reads like this: no temptation has overtaken you except what is common to mankind. Okay, and God is faithful. He won't let you be tempted beyond what you can bear, but when you are tempted, he will also provide a way out so that you can endure it. Okay, I have faced the pressure of drinking many times. Okay, as a young person, now nobody pressurizes me, but as a youth, when I was in Bombay in my factory, in the parties, I would be the only guy who would not drink, and everyone would drink, and after they are drunk, of course, they lose control over their tongue, and then they would call me father and many words for them derogatory. Okay, and something embarrassing, but anyway, it was not easy to bear the mockery of people. Many times I was not there because I wished to be there in those parties, but it would be somebody's farewell, so the occasion would necessitate attendance, but at the same time, some of the things that were being consumed was not something that I could approve of and therefore be part of, and the pressure would be very strong. But the Bible says that God is faithful and he will not let let you be tempted beyond what you can bear. So you may find it difficult to say no. Okay, the situation may be difficult, but yet it is not impossible, because God will give you a way. He will provide a way. He is faithful. That means He is not making exceptions of one believer over another. Every believer will have a way out of the troubles that he finds himself in. Okay, God will give a way. Alcohol, 85.6% of people in US above age 13 have touched alcohol and consumed it once or the other. Okay, more than 3 million deaths take place annually across the globe, and more than 5% of people who are affected by body diseases, they are consumers of alcohol. Okay, the dangerous thing, even physically, alcohol is toxic. It is a poisonous substance. Okay, it is psychoactive. That is, it affects the way your mind functions. Okay, it affects the way you think. It affects the way you make decisions. It affects everything. Okay, and it causes dependence. Okay, dependence means today if you take one peg regularly, then after some time, if you try to stop it, then your body will start shivering. You will break out into cold sweat, and you will become uneasy. You will not be able to sit till you take one peg. But dependence means it will not be one peg. After about a month or two, it will be 1.5 pegs. Means the same amount will not satisfy. So till after a time, it will be a bottle, many bottles, and then finally it keeps increasing. Dependence, it's a disease that causes dependence. Okay, it causes liver damage. Liver cirrhosis means damage, and person loses muscular control. That is why you'll find many people fallen on the street and speaking incoherent things. They lack judgment. When I was a youth, we had a midnight prayer meeting, and we were coming back, two of us in a rickshaw. The rickshaw driver was drunk completely. We were talking about God's judgment that was coming. We were talking with each other. He thought we were talking about his judgment of the road, and he was intoxicated, and he started driving the rickshaw very rashly, almost driving into the divider. Any vehicle coming on the other side of the road, he will drive towards it. Okay, and then at the last minute, he will take a sharp turn and come out of it. And then he would tell us, see, I have judgment. I have judgment. I have not lost my judgment. Then we told him, we are talking about the judgment in Bible, not about your ability to judge. Okay, but he didn't get convinced. Till he dropped us home, he was doing that. It was a 30-minute journey, and we had to endure him. Okay, it affects rational thinking. Most filters of the mind are switched off when a person drinks. Okay, most filters. That means a person will, be more likely to fall into sins that he would otherwise not fall into when he is not drunk. Okay, a boy or a girl may have a sexual relationship with someone he should not have with if he or she is drunk, because the filter that stops him from entering into that type of a relationship goes off when he is drunk. Okay, and people take decisions that they will regret later. Okay, King Xerxes set the rules. The royal wine was abundant. There was no restrictions. People were served what they wished. Okay, and there was peer pressure, and who could withstand it? Psalm 1:1 says, "Blessed is the one who does not walk in the step with the wicked, or stand in the way of sinners, or sit in the company of mockers." Okay, Ephesians 5:18 says, "Don't get drunk on wine, which leads to debauchery. Instead, be filled with the Spirit." Okay, King Xerxes was in high spirits. So verse 10 says that King Xerxes was in high spirits from wine, and he commanded the 7 eunuchs who served him to go to Queen Vashti and ask her to come after that 7 days of lot of liquor being served. Okay, when everyone was drunk completely, wearing her royal crown, to display her beauty to the nobles and people who are obviously drunk, for she was lovely to look at. Okay, Proverbs chapter 20 verse 1 says, "Wine is a mocker, strong drink a brawler, and whoever whoever is intoxicated by it is not wise. Okay, so this was not a wise decision that the king was making. Okay, he was drunk, all his friends were drunk, and what a foolish thing to do, asking his beautiful wife to come before drunken people. Okay, it could have been even a trap that was devised by his friends to expose him, how he lacked judgment, how he couldn't even control his wife. They might have wanted to demonstrate. Okay, two queens were made, had to make a decision about appearing before the queen in this particular book. Vashti refused to go. Esther went in. Vashti was invited by her husband to come in, but she refused to go. And Esther was not called by the emperor, but was asked by the one who raised her up, by Mordecai, to go, and she went in. Okay, even at the cost of her life. The filters were off and the swords were drawn. Okay, I'll try to finish a little bit in 5 minutes. At 9:30, we will stop and continue next week. Okay. No sober individual would want to parade his wife in front of drunken men, but that's what Xerxes did. He set himself on a course for destruction of his family life. You know, many times men take decisions which will put their family lives in destruction mode. Vashti turned down the king. She refused. She publicly gave a snub that bruised his ego. You know, he was emperor of the empire, whole empire. Nobody refused anything to him, but his wife would not listen to him, and he was mad. Okay, could she have sent a note through her those people who came to call her, a private note? That would have been perhaps something that would have avoided the ugly scene, but she chose to do what she did. Okay, many times husbands or wives, they provoke or embarrass their spouse in many ways. Okay, and set off situations of conflict and strife within the family. Okay, and we need to be careful we don't do this, and certainly not do it in the public sphere. Okay, but anyway, Vashti does it. Both are wrong. Okay, but the situation moves on. What next for both? You know, what's the point in doing something like this? But how do you take decisions in your life, especially when a yes to an invitation directly conflicts with conscience, but a no could land you in trouble? You know, in office also you might be in situations like that. When someone comes to collect prasad, to give prasad to you, or to collect money for the building of some temple or for some pagan festival, you know, saying yes and giving might be an easier option. Saying no and standing out and sticking out might be a difficult thing. But do we have the courage that Vashti had? Okay, she stood out by saying no. Okay, the strong stand that she took is contrasted with the weak, spineless decision of Xerxes. You know, he was egged on, provoked, and made to call his wife there. Okay, and he did it. But she was strong enough as a woman to say no. Okay, Corrie ten Boom, her faith made it impossible for her not to do the right thing. Many of us will know who Corrie ten Boom was in the Netherlands. Okay, when the communists came in and the Jews were being persecuted, when Jews were being captured and taken to gas chambers, this family, especially this woman, protected many Jews in her home, hid them. Okay, and then finally paid the price for it as well. Her faith in the living and true God made it impossible for her to not do the right thing, even when the government and everyone in authority thought otherwise. And doing the opposite of what everyone believed could cost her her life. The incidents in this book paved the way for the queening of Esther. Okay, we will end with that. We have taken a little look at the harmful effect of alcohol, a few verses that talk about alcohol and its bad effects, about the way God provides for us to escape from it, and about being in corners where Saying yes might be the easy thing, but saying no might be the right thing before God, and whether we are willing to do it, whether we are willing to trust God for it. Here, a pagan queen who did not trust God also said no, but many times we as believers don't. Okay, so whatever it is, this setting of husband and wife fight, and this drunken party, and this mad ambition of this king, and all his drunken decisions are brought in the fore in chapter 1 to show how that weak, pathetic orphan girl, who had nobody to talk for her, who was later on, when we study chapter 2, we find it difficult. We will end with that. Request Linson to take it forward, and we will continue the study next Friday.